All right, Steeler fans, it's time for the Mailbag Segment, the second half of every Wednesday podcast. I put out the tweet on Tuesday morning. Find me on Twitter at jhartman, HARTMAN_PIT. Find the tweet. You ask the question. I answer it live here on Wednesday. So here we go. We're getting geared up for training camp. There's a lot of questions. Jeff Coons, our buddy from up north, said, greetings from Not Mad Canada. Injuries are a part of the quote-unquote war of attrition in the NFL. Which position on the Steelers roster has the least amount of depth to recover from a possible serious injury impacting a starter? For me, I think, personally, I think it's wide receiver. But I would say that I think that's going to be a common answer if people are answering this as they're listening. I would say that offensive line, whether you're talking tackle, guard, center, is a close second. You think about the defensive line, a lot of depth. Corner now, a lot of depth. Inside linebacker, plenty of depth. Safety, maybe. I think it's those two positions, wide receiver and offensive line. Jeff Coons also said, follow-up comment, I'm delighted to hear that Cameron Johnson is recovering well from a serious injury. Hashtag punter talk. Absolutely agree. Then Jeff gives us a second question. It's a double question. Jeff, have you ever visited Not Mad Canada? If you're ever planning a trip somewhere unique with great golfing, friendly people, a strong conversion value of your U.S. dollar, and a handful of Steeler fans, I'd be happy to make suggestions. I know that my wife has talked about traveling north. When most people are traveling south for the summer, she's talked about going north where it's still seasonable, but a little bit more from a temperature standpoint, cooler. I'm not against going to Canada. I have been to Canada one time, now that I think about it. And this is a little quick aside about Jeff Hartman, the man, or maybe the child, the young adult, we'll put it that way. And when I got into middle school, and it's funny that I became a teacher eventually, I hated school. I love the social aspect of school, but I hated school. Hated class. Didn't want to be there. And I would do anything to get out of class. In middle school, when I was in 8th grade, they said, we need peer mentors. And I was like, well, what is that? And they said, well, Jeff, if you think you'd be a good candidate, you're a guy that gets along with everybody. You talk to everyone. What we're going to do is we would have you miss like a week of school. You don't have to worry about assignments during that week. You never have to go to the high school that's not far. We'll bus you up there every day. You just have to go through some seminars and stuff. And then when you come back, if there's some people that are disagreeing with something, 2 students, we'll put you in there, a peer mediator, and you can kind of mediate the situation. I said, so wait a second, let me get this straight. I can have a week off and go up there and then do that? They said, yeah, we think you'd be a great fit. Sign me up. I'm out of school for a week. Hell yes, let's do it. And that's the same thing as when I was in high school. Someone said, hey, we're going to a Shakespeare festival. Where is it? Canada. Oh, really? Okay. Do I miss school? Yeah, you're going to miss a couple days. Do I have to do like a homework assignment about it? No. Sign me up. I'm there. I don't even know where we went. We got on a bus or a van or something, and we drove from Wheeling, West Virginia, up to Canada. We had to sit through this Shakespeare stuff. I don't remember a lick of it, obviously, but I got out of school. So that was my only trip to Canada right there. That was my only time. I remember the grocery stores were a little different. Everyone was very kind. There you go. If you have some suggestions, Jeff, hit me up. I'm always looking for some good golf and good people and Steeler fans. So there you go. All right, let's go to Andrew Heck. He said, what are your thoughts on Pittsburgh hosting the NFL draft in 2026? Given the strong culture the Steelers have built around their alumni and tradition, do you think that legacy will shape how the city approaches and represents the event? Yes, I do. I think that when you look at what Green Bay did, they had a lot of alumni show up, at least to start and kick off round 1. I think there will be a strong Steeler presence the entire 3 days. I think it's going to be a fun event. I plan on being there in attendance, not at the draft. I'll make that clear. I have zero interest, of standing with all those fans watching Roger Goodell or his cronies go up and announcing draft picks. Zero interest. But I do want to be there to cover it, to talk with you all, the Ride or Die crew that are in attendance, and have a little event there for the Steel Curtain Network fans for Sports Network. I hope we can differentiate that. I hope I get to see you there. All right, let's go to Brandon Diaz. He has several questions. First, what is the percentage that TJ is traded? I personally think it's 40% and rising. I would say that is less than 10%. Don't listen to the fodder on social media. Could it be rising? Maybe. but it might have risen from like a 9 to a 10%. It is a very low percentage, I believe, that he gets traded. Second question, do you see a possibility that Will Howard is quarterback 2 and Mason slips to quarterback 3? There's only one way that happens, in my opinion, and that is if Mason Rudolph absolutely sucks it up in both training camp and the preseason. That's it. And Will Howard's going to have to play well. If those two things happen, they coincide, then that maybe it happens. Third, who's starting the first training camp fight? The first training camp fight is always with a fringe player that's trying to be known, trying to get recognized. I never even know these people's names, so it's hard for me to guess who's going to be that's a good question, though. And then 30 scenarios in 30 days, the Steelers start 5-0. Thoughts? I do not have them starting 5-0. If you check out my schedule breakdown, they're in week 9. I'm not going to tell you what my record is for them, but I do not have them starting 5-0 on the season. All right, let's go to Brandon. He said, now that training camp is almost here, which player on each offense and defense has the most on the line? He said, hashtag Elm Grove ride or die. Brandon, I was just in Elm Grove last weekend. Maybe I saw you, maybe I didn't. I don't know. I would hope if I saw you, you would at least honk the horn or say what's up. So training camp is here. Yes, offense and defense has the most on the line. A player on offense, I think, has the most on the line, to me, is someone like Calvin Austin III. He's entering the final year of his contract. Does he earn himself a new deal with the Steelers, or is he going to hit the open market? I think he has the most on the line. But I would say that if he's 1A, 1B is Broderick Jones. Because if Broderick Jones sucks on the left side, that is horrible. The Steelers traded up to get this guy. They didn't give him an opportunity. You could say it was coaching malpractice, whatever. I think Broderick Jones and by proxy, you look at Calvin Austin III, they have a lot on the line. Defensively, I'm going to say from a defense standpoint, I think Joey Porter has a lot on the line. I really do. And I think Keanu Benton, 2 guys drafted in the second round of that same draft, they both have to take a big step forward. They have to take a big step forward. It might not be make or break time, but if they're looking at second contracts with the Steelers, it's a big deal. All right, let's go to Brian Haynes. He asked 2 questions. First, when does the deal with TJ get done? Why are we waiting? What's going on here? I said this in the first half, and I'll say it again. I think that the deal with TJ Watt gets done around preseason week 1. That's just my guess. No insider information. Next, he said, honest question, if the Steelers traded TJ and the Steelers win a ring, and he said, I don't think that's possible, but let's go with it. Number 1, do the Steelers send him a ring? Hell no. If he's not on the team, you don't get a ring. That's just how it works. Number 2, do you think that fans will say TJ was the problem? Of course they will, because that's what fans do. And I've always said this, the Steelers fan base is a fan base that will still complain about a Super Bowl win. They'll find something to complain about. It's just the way, it's the nature of the beast. All right, let's go to Tendercat. Jeff, why are people so concerned on whether the Steelers are starting to run the organization more like a business rather than a family, if you will? I mean, isn't everyone tired of losing, not winning Super Bowls, the playoff drought? After all, this is a business. All right, Tendercat, shots fired at my girl Lori. Let's chill out. She asked an honest question, and I answered it. And I said that I think that you need both. You can go back and listen last Wednesday. That's when I did the podcast. I'm sure you probably did listen. But if you didn't, go back and listen to get the full answer that I think you need a more business approach. And I agree. Things need to be different. You can't do the same thing year after year and expect different results. We all know what that equates to. It's just idiotic. So what we don't want to do is just continue to be in this cycle of doing the same thing. What we need to do and what we need to see are changes and differences in approach. That's what we're seeing. And I'm here for it. I'm here for all of it. But I don't want them to lose the family, tight-knit community. I don't want them to lose that. I think that's really important. All right, let's finish this podcast up with Steeler Fan 69, who always gives us a little bit of humor to finish out the podcast with some dad jokes. First one. Why should you never fall in love with a tennis player? Wimbledon just passed. Just a quick aside, Wimbledon was just completed. So why should you never fall in love with a tennis player? Because love means nothing to them. And if you don't get that joke, go look it up. That was a good one. Let's go to the next one. Dad, are we pyromaniacs? And the answer from the father is yes, we arson. Arson. Get it? Arson. I like it. Last word of the day is inhale. Usage. Why inhale did I ever get married? Those were his words, not mine. Not that my wife is going to listen to this, but I'm happily married for 18 years now. I want to thank everyone that contributed to the mailbag segment. I'm sure these questions are going to be ramped up as we get ready for training camp, and I hope that you are excited. Next Wednesday is when the Steelers report to camp. Next Wednesday is when we always have our training camp confidential. What is the training camp confidential? Well, let me explain it. It'll be at steelcurtainnetwork.com. It'll be about 24, actually more like 48 to 72 hours of a steady stream of content. It's going to be a little bit more content than you're used to seeing from us, and we're going to get you ramped up, because if you're like me, when the Steelers report to camp, that's when the season starts. And when they report to camp and the season starts, you just want to consume as much content as possible. And we're going to provide it not just here on the podcast side on the Steel Curtain Network, but also at steelcurtainnetwork.com. So make sure you check out all of those podcasts, all of those articles. It is completely free, and we thank every single one of you who helps us out in that regard. But that does it for me. You know how we finished it out. Be safe, be kind, and God bless. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you on Friday. Go Steelers.